Good afternoon, friends. What I'll do is use this 5 minutes to introduce our panelists to you. You have just heard the name of the companies, and they're all very accomplished professionals, and there's a lot more to each one of them. So, first of all, Mr. Alok Kumar, he is the Chief Service Delivery Officer at Aircel. Hardcore telecom guy, that's what I learned when we were chatting before the session. More than 8 years now with Aircel, and before that 7 with Airtel, and stuff which he has done in CRM, which I think was the term which I learned probably 15 years ago. There was nothing called customer relationship management till then, but he has been in that area even longer than that. So really a veteran, and welcome him on the panel. One interesting thing which I wanted to mention about out of his long resume was the book which he has written on theory and application of CRM. I would like to definitely go through that sometime. And then we have Mr. Arvind Vohra, who is the country CEO and managing director of Gionee, and again a mobile technology veteran for the last 12 years, and including launching Gionee in India and making it so successful in a very unique way, and taking it to the newer and newer heights. We will how they are doing it. This is what we want to learn from them. We all know about the stories of some of the more, I would say, revered and more popular brands, but learning about Gionee will be definitely. I'm not saying it's less popular, Arvind, in any which way, but definitely would like to know more about your strategy. Absolutely. And then we have Gaurav here, is the Chief Marketing Officer of OLX, and don't want to say much about OLX. I think they have spent enough money educating all of us what OLX is all about, and himself is a hardcore marketing guy, a few years with Yahoo before OLX, and finally in 2015, Marketer of the Year award. Congratulations, Gaurav. And then we have Prabhjeet Singh. So didn't have much trouble looking at his profile because he only sent 3 lines as compared to many other where I had to sift through things. So he is with the Uber India, and I can't imagine that anybody in the room who will not know Uber would not have used Uber. And before that he was with McKinsey as an associate partner, and worked on different kind of assignments with different kind of companies. But right now I think Uber must be keeping him fully happy and feeling satiated doing things with his own hands, rather than continuing to do things, talking about things like I still do as a consultant. So these are my panelists, and now we will get on with the discussion. So my take on this customer experience as a differentiator. So I read it somewhere that people don't buy goods and services. They actually buy relations, they buy stories, and they buy magic. Right? I don't even know who said it, but I really liked it, and it's on my mobile. I have kept it there. And so when you talk about this magic and the stories, and then I clearly remember the man Giorgio Armani himself. I had the opportunity to have a lunch with him, and he doesn't speak any English. He only speaks Italian. There was another gentleman, vice chairman of the company, who was translating it for me. And he told me even later that any time Mr. Armani has met anybody, he repeats the same story. And the story is that, gist of that is that we don't sell suits, right? We just don't sell suits. So we make suits, people pay for the suits, but we don't sell suits. What we sell is, we sell a lifestyle. We sell somebody a lifestyle, that this is what now, it's a Armani lifestyle which you are coming into. So just imagine simple thing as a suit, and people buy it for whatever reasons they buy, but the man who is created, who is 70 plus and still the chief designer and the single owner of the company, says that we don't sell suits at all. So that's where it connects with that people just don't buy goods and services. In India, because of the way the economy was, the way that we were structured as a country and how closed we had very few things. There was always more demand than the supply, and even demand wasn't there because demand wasn't being created. But in the last 20 years, in my professional life, I have seen things changing and how difficult it has become for the marketeers to stand out because there's just so much on offer. But even now when we compare it with the markets like US, in any segment you pick up, we don't have as many brands as many Americans will have. Even in a saturated market, they continue to keep up with new brands and new product categories. I think in India, we are going to still see that. How do we stand out? What do we need to do? And I think that's where this customer experience comes as an answer, that product, service, everything put together. The customers are looking for an experience. They are looking for that story. They are looking for that magic. And are we up to it to provide that? How do we provide that? On one side, we talk about consumers becoming more and more demanding. But at the same time, who is making them more demanding? And just before I was listening to this lady who said that Indigo experience, that after the third flight, you get used to it. It's absolutely right. And I compare it with the comment which back in 2000, the first time we were doing a retail summit in Bombay, and Raghu Pillai, who was the RPG CEO at that point of time, and he was one of the few people who were actually doing retail in India. And there we were discussing about these things, that how Indian retailers are not doing anything, how unorganized retail service is so bad, we need to do this and that. And he made that comment 15, 16 years ago. He said, Harminder, we need to be careful about it. What do we do for the customer? Because anything we do, tomorrow we have to go get better than that. So this whole customer satisfaction, customer delight, customer experience which we talk about, so while it's a differentiator, it's more and more we are doing, together we are making consumer far more demanding. And the consumer obviously is loving it, because they say that fine, that's whatever you offer, bring it on. Whether they are willing to pay for it, whether they are not willing to pay for it, it's another debate. And whether we are even asking for money. PVR charges for every ticket you book, but Flipkart, Amazon, they are willing to pick up anything for exchange free of cost in India, and they don't do it in US. So what are we doing to make the customer so demanding? I think that's one thing which we need to keep in mind. So we want to beat the competition, but as an industry, as marketeers, as professionals, what are we doing? Where are we taking this whole thing? How far we are taking it? Technology is the big piece, which obviously here most of the people understand very well. And I think that's what has made us, all of us, far more excited about, oh, we can do this also, we can do that also, and we wanting to do much more with the consumer, much more engage with the consumer, and offer things to consumer which they wouldn't have imagined, right? But technology on one side can take us so close to the consumer. On the other side, it makes it very, very impersonal. It's pushing us away from the consumer. We are becoming so process-driven, we are becoming so method-driven, we are becoming so script-driven, that we are forgetting that each consumer in itself, in herself or himself, she's looking for a very, very personalized engagement, because today she's gotten used to the fact that she calls up Pizza Hut and Pizza Hut knows everything about her. And if they don't, it's very upsetting for her to repeat the address or to repeat the order or anything for that matter, because she assumes that it must be available with them. So she's gotten used to that part. She thinks you are using technology to get closer to me, but at the same time, the process somewhere make it very, very impersonal, and that's where she gets very pissed off. So it's a two-edged sword, and you need to be we all need to be very, very careful about that. How do we take that? Talking about the experiences, personalization, like just this example is personalization is not anything which consumers are any more excited about. They just expect it. So this example I am giving, it's personalization, and they think, yeah, everybody in your company, because you have the computer in front of you and you have the database, you should know everything about me. Who am I? Where am I from? What last order? What points? What CRM? Everything you need to know about. And if you don't, then they really don't. So differentiator has to go beyond that, much more beyond that. In terms of one of the most engaged category in case of retail, I'll give example further, is apparel. When people want to go out to buy clothing, it's a high engagement category where people want to look at the clothing and they want to touch and feel it, they want to try it out, they won't expect the salesperson to even comment on how they look and all of those things. And we've been working with some of the companies and their technology again, because there's technology, let's do something. So now let's have these 3D scanners which can scan the person and tell you exactly what size will fit you. You are using technology to push consumer away. While we did very, very deep research on this, and we found that consumers are happier if actually there was somebody who will take an inch tape and measure them, even though they are buying ready-made clothing. The whole idea was to tell them exactly what size shirt, trouser, etc. will fit you, what changes need to be made. The biggest issue in the transaction was not that what they are buying. Biggest issue was that how the alteration will be done and how quickly and how fast it can be done. Because they assume that the quality of the trouser they are buying is perfect. Price is absolutely what they want to pay, and they will get delivery right now of their size, color, and this thing. But now the alteration, 2 inches short trouser, how quickly it can be done. That's where the customer experience, the whole customer experience hinging only on that, right? So finding that within the story, within the relation which we are building, that where exactly it hinges, I think is going to be the key differentiator, not just the customer experience. Customer experience on that specific point, each company, each category, each brand will have to figure that out. So that's what my on thoughts on this subject are. And now I'll be inviting each one of my panelists to give their thoughts on this, and so bear with us.
Okay, thank you. No, is mine? Okay. Thank you, Harminder, for the introduction and for setting the tone for the discussion. I think you rightly said that customer experience management in the country, while everybody has talked about it, I think everybody instinctively knows about it, but the supply-demand equation was always in the favor of the supplier supplying products without caring too much about the customer and the experience. So I think the situation in the country, even now, though it has improved, I think there is a lot more competition, there is a lot more the supply side, while it is there, I think the demand and the customers and consumers becoming more demanding has already come in place. Yet, I think the whole metrics about how customer experience can impact the brand and how it can impact the business profitability or business metrics is still in the area of a little bit in the esoteric. I don't think it is still very defined in a manner that the CEOs or the CMOs can make a correlation of the experience to the brand and to what it can make. So I think a lot of investment goes into distribution, into sales, into other areas. Customer experience still remains as post-sales dissonance handling, by and large, and a bit of handling the customer queries. I think that's where customer experience today in the country is. I guess more the science of customer experience management as it evolves, as it gets understood, and as the brand correlation gets established within the CMO's mind and within the CEO's mind, that is where I see a far greater traction on customer experience management take place. I think there is a lot of work, and that is why I think these conferences and these forums are very important catalysts to make that happen. Instinctively, everybody will say great experience. There will be a lot of anecdotes about how great experience we had. CEOs will get into parties and talk about how bad experience they've had. But when it comes to their own investment into customer experience within their own product category, they will balk. They will probably put it into an area which will not have to do with customer experience, but will have to do more with maybe a product push or a marketing spend, A&P spend. I think that is where it will take place. So I guess it's the stage of the market. It's the stage of the science of customer experience management that still is evolving. And of course, the correlations I think have to build very strongly between the brand and the customer experience. I think it can't remain esoteric. It has to be very, very sharp, very defined, and that's where customer experience will evolve to the next stage of its implementation. So this is where I see the whole game taking place. And once that happens, I'm sure what we talk about, a lot of anecdotes, a lot of wish list comes. That proactive and other areas. But why would somebody invest in this area unless you see a return coming very fast or very correlated directly to the business?
Right.
I think that's the...
Yeah. No, thanks, Alok, and fully agree with you, because I think CEOs definitely take calls on the basis of where they see the return. And I think it's the job of people who are managing this field and the people who are the marketeers and who have understood that where it impacts. I think they need to present those correlations. And given the way the technology is evolving, again I'll come to that. Consumer facing is one part, but internally the analytics and the way things are, I think I get so excited about this, how much one can do. The issue is that how to pick the right points within that. Now you know a lot, but you need to pick the right one to do that. Gaurav from OLX, he will now give his viewpoints.
Yeah, no, actually I can really relate to what Alok was talking about, especially around the correlation bit. We were discussing before the panel started about how e-commerce, digital businesses, why there's this thing that we don't know when we go home. There's so much of data that keeps on coming to our table, to our laptops, to our mobile, that you just don't know when to switch off and just distance yourself from work. That is because causalities haven't formed. The correlations still are still tenuous, right? I'm like, in the nebulous zone. I'm like, what's the input, what's the output? It's still nebulous. I'm like, what worked yesterday, it's not working, might not work tomorrow. In fact, so let me just step back and get out of the professional zone and narrate an incident from my personal life. I'm a young parent. I've got a 6-year-old daughter, a 2-year-old boy. And for past one and a half years, I've been telling my daughter a bedtime story every night before she goes to sleep. So we made up this fictitious character, and she started getting the whole story, and she really started to like these stories. Through trial and error, I found out that she likes these ghost stories a lot more, princess stories a lot more, and not necessarily the other kind of genres. So I focused my energies into thinking of new ghost stories or princess stories for her to listen to. So she started giving me good feedback. The second level of feedback that she gave me, and I'm very thankful that she was vocal about it, is when I used to be tired or not in the mood to tell her stories, I used to a 2-minute story cut short, and she used to listen to those stories, but next day she used to tell me that, let's not do what happened during our bedtime yesterday. She gave me feedback, and that's an essential part. A customer who chooses to go silent over perceived ill treatment or perceived performance which hasn't been delivered, that is someone whom you can't afford to let go out of the system. It's better to have consumers who are vocal about their displeasures or dissonances with you. It's extremely critical that even if things are going well as per you, your matrix, business is booming, there's this periodic roundup of the customer's interactions at each touch point with you, be it with the product, be it with the customer support, even be it other touch points. I mean, I come from a digital business, so we have very few touch points. And that's why it's so essential to understand the relation that they have with those touch points, and how do we optimize, how do we give them a little bit more pleasure every time they touch base with us at those touch points. So it's essentially, for me, customer experience is the only reason this guy will endorse you again. And maybe a person who chooses to go silent is a person whom we haven't just lived up to at all. So I would rather have a person who's extremely dissatisfied, gets on the social media, really speaks bad about him, because that guy cares about that relation that we have and is not getting that from us. So that's what I think about customer experiences.
No, I can relate with that. Only couple of years I lived in US, a short while, and I came across a book which said how to be a good American citizen. And there were some 100 things, so Americans have these kind of 100 things or 50 things or 100 things. One of the things was, surprisingly, always respond to a consumer survey. That's what it said. Believe it or not, always respond to a consumer survey, and still date, I always do. Because it's such a wonderful thing to do, that you have to give feedback, otherwise how things are going to improve. So whether it's the government survey or a company doing a survey, if you don't give feedback, so I think somewhere there needs to be a campaign, maybe Alok, you should be doing it for people, that people should respond to consumer surveys, because our strike rates in India are very, very low otherwise. Prabhjeet, please.
Thank you, Harminder. I think there are two themes I'll try and just stitch back to set the context as I see this, especially from Uber perspective. I think you talked about technology, Harminder, and Gaurav spoke about feedback, and we just came that theme. I think to us, as we think of our business model, and I think increasingly an emerging set of business models, which I call platform businesses, which are very different from traditional businesses, which have more like what I call the pipes businesses. And the distinction being, in a pipes business, you create a service or a product, and the point of consumption will be downstream. And therefore the feedback or the customer experience will be further away in time typically. But increasingly, the new business models which are emerging thanks to technology are platform businesses. For example, on our platform, the service gets created and consumed at the same time. So to us, to ensure that a business which is actually as close to utility as it gets, that's what our aspiration is. How do you take a utility business which is actually being consumed and created real time, still create a magical experience which is repeatable on every single touch point? So that's the kind of challenge which we are trying to tackle with. And at least our core philosophy around that, I think, and we are very, very early stages. I think we're learning a lot from all traditional businesses ourselves and trying to incorporate it in India. We have been only here for 2 years. There are 2 or 3 core principles which over the last 12, 18 months we have learned. I think principle number 1 has been around, in a platform business, how do you ensure that the data which is being captured, which is a real-time feedback, for example, in our case. In our case, our consumers are not just the riders, but also the drivers. So we have to look at both of them together. How do you use the data which is being captured in a meaningful and fruitful way? I can imagine that the bulk of you in the room who have always wondered what is the rating which you get from the driver when you finish the trip, as much as the driver wonders what's the rating which you gave to him or her after that. Now, the reason that's important is because that data is actually used real time to decide which quality of drivers will stay on the platform, and eventually at some point which quality of riders will also stay on the platform, to ensure that the experience can be magical and repeatable, even though we don't own any part of the service creation or consumption. So that's been principle 1, ensuring that what we capture, we're using it. And that's the kind of work which we do through our algorithms. And the second part of the principle has been around trying to create magic, and we used the word a couple of times before, at each and every touch point, while recognizing that the people providing that service will be different. So in our case, there are 3 steps to the service being provided before the trip. Now, how do I create magic before the trip? To us, it's about reliability. It's about using technology to ensure if there is a rider who wants a ride, he or she should be able to get it within less than 5 minutes. To do that, I need to make sure that I'm pushing a driver to come at a certain point. Is he or she is available in a certain space based on my estimation of what the demand and supply forecast will be. So that's my ability to create magic using technology. Step 2 of the journey for me is when a trip is ongoing. Now, how do I ensure each time you get typically a different driver, how do you ensure that the experience is similar? He or she is similarly polite. The car is, if not 100% clean, close to gold standard what we would want. And the route taken by the driver is actually seamless and frictionless. Now, to do that, we have to ensure that whatever we do in the offline world, which is in terms of driver training, complements what we do in the online world, which is the feedback captured from the riders goes back to the driver in a customized manner. We talked about customization, that each driver actually knows what is it that he or she needs to do differently. Did he get a 4-star rating because his car wasn't clean? Did he get a 4-star rating because he or she took a longer route than what the consumer perceived it to be? Or is it because he or she took longer to arrive at that point when on the map it seemed that he should have gotten there sooner? So that the feedback flows in, it gets linked back to his or her incentives or earnings on the platform that leads to behavior being changed. Now that we are able to do that because the real-time flow of information and a clear definition of what we consider gold standard acceptance on the driver's side and the rider's side. And the third step, which is a big part of a machine which many people don't see, is what happens after the trip, is the entire support infrastructure which exists to create, every time a support ticket is being created, how do we ensure that to an extent possible, we are not just responding but also creating magic so that at the end of it, either the driver or the rider feels delightful. There are many people who talk about why don't you have a call center in India. Many people don't know we actually have a call center for drivers. Because if you look back at which is a segment which needs most help and which is not digitally savvy, it's the drivers. So how do you create magic for that segment? So you try to create that loop at every step to try and create magic. We are probably not there yet as to the level we want, but we are kind of getting there, and we're learning from all the other businesses around us and picking the best from them.
Thanks, Prabhjeet. We'll come back to for some more specific questions on Uber later on that. So Arvind, if you could please take on.
Yeah, thanks a lot. I think my business is of very traditional nature of selling mobile phones, and whatever you'll end up doing with the enablers. So about 3.5 years back, when I decided to start this business, we were up against a wall which said you're a Chinese company, and so what do? You can't hide that and stuff like that. So it was very hard for us to make anybody believe that being a Chinese company, we could offer American satisfaction. So that was the challenge before us. And you're just coming back to what you said, sir, and what you said a little in the beginning. For me, the biggest challenge up the wall was how do I take my stocks to the market? Since we are not a pipe business where we go to the end customer, we had a huge set of resistance in between in terms of trade. And I couldn't talk to the customer directly at that point of time. So I actually set up a service warehouse and I brought all my trade partners to my service warehouse to see what kind of preparedness I had in spare parts before they started stocking. So, so the retailer who was to sell my product was very clear that if I don't give service to the consumer, he's going to lose name. So I started building a service warehouse. So I used to have about, I remember, I used to have about 5,000 square feet, and 4,000 square feet was service. So people were very happy, 80% service. Next, what I did was I took all the key retailers of the country to go and see the factory. And factory also, I would go and make them see customer service. Because of a simple reason, it was somewhere in their mind that Chinese quality is not good and service is worse. So that was the starting point. We started doing our business. Now what I did was I created an ID which is known as gcare@gionee.co.in, and you'll be surprised to know, and you can check my mobile phone right now. All the mails from that ID come to me directly, and I read each and every mail, and that gave me an idea as to where we were going wrong. So we landed up, satisfying the luckily quality wasn't bad. One way of ensuring good consumer service is have a good quality product. So quality wasn't bad, so fault ratio was less. We were able to make it for some time. But what was very pertinent was, once, like that lady said about Indigo, so once the retailer saw there was no problem, then we landed up into a situation, he started questioning me on my turnaround time. So then we started building turnaround times. So first I disseminated information of having a warehouse with spare parts. As we grew a little bit more into the journey cycle, the customer, my customer being the retailer, started asking me about what is your delivery. So we had to prove to him what is our delivery. And last but not the least, I started speaking to the consumer on a one-to-one email, but I view it and I give my inputs. And my mojo in life actually came in when somebody wrote a mail to me saying that, dear Gionee, my M-class is having problems syncing the Bluetooth with your S7. So that's the day I realized that if I'm relevant to a Merck customer, I've done my job. So end of the day, all I would like to say is listen to your consumers. They'll tell you what to do. And I completely agree with your daughter giving you feedback, because that's the person that you should listen to. And the philosophy that we stay with is do well, but do good.
No, I think, Arvind, the point which you made connecting with Alok's point in terms of CEOs not investing enough, I think the best thing CEOs can invest is their own time to invest into listening.
I'll give you a small secret. He interviewed me in 1999 for a customer services role because I was desperate, my company was shutting down. Right. And he said, Arvind, I don't think you made for customer services. And that was the best decision, because then I became an entrepreneur, and I was just telling him that today for me, that was the best decision when you rejected me. So thank you so much, sir.
Okay. So now we come to the discussion section, more or less a discussion, more of a Q&A from my side to keep it very, very sharp and pointed. And I have a few questions for these people. They know what they are, and I'm going to ask not all of those, right? We are short on time, but I'll pick and choose. So Alok, coming back to you again. So in terms of customer experience enhancement, I'm sure you're using a lot of models, different models to do that. So if you could share some of those with us, that what do you, and given your experience, Aircel is where you are right now, but given your experience in this whole area of CRM and all of that, please spice it up with some other models as well, not necessarily from your current company. Then what are those experience enhancement models we can take away from here today?
Harminder, one of our realization, in fact, the starting point was that what do customers expect from a brand or a service? I think the first thing he expects is let the service, deliver the basics right. And rightly said, I think that's the first confidence that we have to give to a consumer. And in Aircel, we worked on that as the first starting point, that our service, whatever we give to the customer, let it work. Let it work to the promise that we are delivering. I think instead of talking esoteric and talking fluff, we said let's focus on the basic essentials, give to the consumer what he wants, and I think that itself builds a lot of trust.
Right.
And so that's one. So it's not, I'm not talking anything. I think it's very important to first deliver the basics, and basics in telcos when you have 5,000 to 10,000 people giving service, sometimes that itself is a big challenge. Because how do you ensure consistency? How do you ensure repeatability of the service that is there? I think it's a challenge that you have to devise different methods to do it. So we have done a lot of innovation in this area of making sure we have followed what is called the McDonald model of service in the sense that, like McDonald, they train people to deliver. Even a college graduate, when he comes and works for 15 days, he is able to repeat the service.
Right.
We are the same model for agents who come into the call center. They come for a tenure of 6 months.
Right.
Within that 6 months, he has to get trained on all the telecom products is to deliver service. So we use those as innovation. So we have adapted from the various areas. So that's one area. I think, so repeating what is there. Then what we realized was that your customers are, see, we all are urban guys. We think urban. But India, and as your tele-density is reaching deeper inside the country, we realize that the consumers who are coming in the villages, who are coming in towns, small towns, for them service is not call center, it's not cell service. For them the service is the retailer.
Right.
And we have to make retailer as a service point and enable the retailer to give service.
True.
Now again, this was a focus. Normally retailers are used for sales, for pushing the product.
Right.
So we took the step of ensuring that how do we make the retailer as a service point. And the challenge in telco was that, there was always this challenge and that you have to pay the retailer to give service. We said, no, that's not the way. The customer belongs to the retailer. He stays in that vicinity. Right. He buys a lot of products from there. So we said we are not going to pay anything to the retailer. It was quite a change in the way that the thing was being perceived. So that's another model. I think, again, coming to the point, listening to the customers. When we listen, we realize that the customer in the villages, he likes local dialect. He likes the local language. He likes the local feel. And if you can give this through the retailer, he is much more happier. He doesn't want to deal with the company.
Right.
For him, Aircel is impersonal.
Yeah, or somewhere else.
So I think these are the innovations. So one, keeping the basics. Second, listening to the consumers.
Right.
And of course, making sure that whatever we are doing, we're trying to do it as best, as sustainable as possible.
Right.
I think these are the planks of customer experience that we believe have.
So simple.
Given
Keep it
us
simple. That's the core
Keep it
message.
simple,
Keep it
yes.
simple. Here to service, so please do the service. Bow your head and do the service. So Prabhjeet, how do you do this across so many countries, so many cities in India? How do you keep that consistency of service? How do you manage that part? Because the urban consumer versus a semi-urban consumer, and obviously there are consumers who are traveling from one country to another. It's a pretty seamless experience to an extent, but then the models change. Like in US, it's different. In India, it's completely different. How do you do that? And you guys are obviously figuring it out all on the fly. You are a startup still.
Yeah. I think I'll be the first one to confess that have we figured everything out? No. But at least the way we are approaching it is, I think, in two parts. One is we have a set of core principles which are the non-negotiables, which are same for everywhere, whether you are a rider or a driver in Delhi or a rider or driver in New York. And that starts from core principles around reliability on the driver side and affordability on the rider side. What it means is, how do I keep making the platform more and more efficient through a self-learning mechanism, so that it gets better and better to make sure that the driver and riders get matched. Now, the technology works the same way across all the world, but you need to kind of start customizing to local nuances. So just to give an illustration, in India, a couple of things that we have had to do to adjust while keeping the core the same. So for example, cash. Now this is something which Uber has never done before globally. We always used to think of that would limit the experience which we wanted, which was to be that a car is available just like a private car in less than 5 minutes. The moment cash comes in, there's a transaction and there's a delay which gets done at the end of the journey. But we also recognize that you can't leapfrog the ecosystem, as we recognize in India, and we introduced cash. That helped us bring and provide that service to an entirely new segment, which was hungry for that, which wanted a reliable and affordable mode of transport. But the core of it, which is the core service and the quality of what would constitute a good driver, still remains the same. Or what would constitute a good payments experience still remains the same. We enabled cash, but we created a system around it which would A, encourage cash users to adopt digital systems over a period of time, and B, in case there are any transaction-related friction, we ramped up our support, which will allow people to actually deal with that in a quick and efficient manner. As an example, there are challenges related, often get support tickets which are related to 10 or 20 rupees. Now it's not efficient to actually have somebody in the consumer support center address that ticket end to end, because it's going to cost you more to address that ticket. So we have introduced self-service. What that does is, for ticket transactions like this, we trust the rider. He or she just has to raise the request and will automatically get refunded. And there's a belief in the trust which we are building. So I think that begins to kind of talk about localization to do that. The second thing which at least we are learning as we do this is recognizing that while the core platform is still be the same, you need to customize to local expectations. For example, if you look at ETA, in India, when it was very interesting as we did some research, our engineers spend nights and hours and days trying to get our expected time of arrival to the last second accurate. But what we realize in India is, even though we are saying the car's 5 minutes away, in the rider's mind, because 5 minutes in India actually means 7 or 9 minutes, that's almost given, the rider is not going to be ready to take the ride in 9 or 10 minutes. Right. Now, that's a real debate which we are still struggling with. How do you respond to something like that? On one side, we want to get as accurate, but in the rider's mind, even if the car comes in 5 minutes, he or she will still take 10 minutes. Right. So that's something we're still trying to address. So have you figured it out? No. But it's about localizing while keeping the core platform still the same and the core principles the same. Yeah.
Just plug in the Indian Standard Time into algorithm. I don't know much of technology, but I'm sure you can figure that out. So Gaurav, coming to you more than Uber, in your case, it's only thing which you are dealing with is customer experience, isn't it? Right? Because whatever you do, I have used OneDirect, so it's somebody's stuff, somebody else is buying, and you are just managing that whole experience of people transacting with each other. So how do you manage that? What's in your control? Right? How do you measure it and how you do it? This is what I always wondered, that what are you guys doing there?
You mentioned when you were introducing me, everybody knows OLX, we have spent a lot of money. Right. That's the only thing that I have under control. Okay. I don't have anything under control. I joined OLX about 3 years and a few months earlier, pretty much the starting team of OLX. And whenever I used to sit with my boss, Amarjeet Singh, and we used to discuss, I'm like, how can this industry, which has never existed in India, even in offline parlance, look, if you look at all digital businesses, they're taking something which exists in the physical world, and they just came online, right? I'm like Uber, right. I'm like, taxis were there, online travel agents, and so on and so forth. For us, this C2C, people to people, selling and buying of second-hand items. Come on, this was not in our culture, cultural codes, everything kind of stopped us from doing this. So even we did not know what was our promise to the consumer. Okay, even if two people are like meeting up with each other, right, how soon can they sell or buy, at what price, and so on and so forth, because all these things will determine what your user experience or customer experience was like. Right. So we understood that at the very crux of the platform that we were trying to build is nothing but the principle of democracy, of the people, for the people, and by the people. This was the strongest thing that we could have leveraged upon. So the number of millions of people who were coming, could they all participate in making this platform even much more robust? So you're right, we don't control any of those transactions. I don't know if you are transacting with someone else. I mean, how is your transaction going? Because happening in an offline world, right, it's not happening on my platform. So he said, can you champion OLX itself? So our customer experience is not driven or only limited to the interactions that people have with OLX. Our customer experience starts with us educating the customers beforehand, right, even before they start transacting on OLX. How to transact safely, how to write a good ad so that you can get a lot of buyers in, how to price well so that you can get like a person to give you that price without too much of negotiations and hassles. That is the only thing that we could control, educating people. And then the second thing came, that how do you educate 1.3 billion people? Right? That is the bigger problem. I mean, it's all good and fine in theory, but when rubber hits the road is when, the reality happens. And that's where we use marketing, if I can say so, pretty well. Right. We made sure that we educated people about how to engage with this platform, the expectations from this platform, and how do you transact in a safe and secure manner and still get what you wanted? So for us, customer experience, as much as we also drive, it's also in the hand of our consumers in a very, very big way.
Right.
And that's where I think we are succeeding pretty well. So that was...
So I agree that in your case, most definitely, you needed all that education of the consumers. With this part, I always wondered initially when it all started that how are they going to do it in India? Because in India, most of the people, rather they will hand it down than sell it, right? Because today I may be selling something in my home which I could have handed down to my driver, but now I might be selling it to somebody else's driver, right? And that transaction is happening. And honestly speaking, I have done this, and 4,000 rupees earned this way sometimes, I think makes you feel so much richer. It's not funny. So thanks for doing this. So Arvind, coming to you. See, it's a very, very crowded market you are in. Extremely crowded market you are in. And I still, to some extent, believe in your case, product is still the king. Right? Because at the end of it, we use it all the time, more than we use anything else, even most of our body parts, other than the ones which are working involuntarily. I think we use it more often than that. And so where the customer experience part, because it will all come later, right? Once people have bought the product and they have used it, and customer experience comes later after that. So for you in this crowded market, how are you wanting to use this customer experience part to bring success to your company, more success to your company?
See, I think unfortunately, we think consumer experience is post-sales. That's not the criteria. Okay. When you talk about smartphones, I remember when we used to make feature phones, it was just a transaction of calling up and sending an SMS. Now today, with this device that you have, I think it's the most potent device which knows you more than you know yourself. Right. And if unfortunately or unluckily I was to get a soul for your phone, you won't know where to hide your face. You know, it's as simple as that. Because you have a world inside your phone and you have a world outside your phone. So this is the outside world, and you don't know what others must be tweeting right now. This guy is talking nonsense, he's a sucker, X, Y, Z. Must be happening already. Yeah. So for me, what was most important was have a product which gives consumer the experience that he's bought it for. So I had this problem of pricing. People said, why don't you go on a Ubuntu OS and price it at 1,999? Right. I said, no, my entry-level device starts at $100. Or at that time, dollar was a little kind, so it was 5,999. Right. Today, dollar is like almost 6,999. So I can't do that. So people ask me, you're going to go out. I mean, you're a Chinese company. You don't want to price low. I mean, there's no equity you have. What the hell are you going to do? Right. So it's simple. Stick to consumer experience. So we never compromised on RAM, which you hear. We never compromised on user experience and so on and so forth. And then something which we really capitalized on was our customized ROM. So today, most of the devices that you see are on stock Android. And I think you'll be able to, figure it out with me, because if you're going to juice Android, you're an iOS guy, you won't understand this. Yeah. But
I am the dumb one, so
I mean, that's why Steve had his job. So coming back to...
it's easier to make money from dumb ones.
So, I mean, as far as Android is concerned, if you want to juice up Android, you need to have some launcher, you need to have some customization. Android in isolation of a customized ROM is meaningless. So we spent a lot of time on making our own customized ROM. That is one. And secondly, I think what we've done with Gionee is we've focused a lot on design. So today we're making phones which measure up to the need of the consumer of large batteries. I mean, if I was to tell you this is a sleek little device which has about almost 5,000 milliamperes battery, but has design. And at the same time, our customized ROM is allowing us to do power consumption where you have more battery. You may like it or may not like it. Your biggest pain is no battery, and you're ready to carry an extra device. Right. So for me, battery is the key. Absolutely. Design, you can't be dumb, because fat is not beautiful in India, irrespective of whatever it might give you. Yeah. So you got to get your design correct. You got to get your customization correct. And net, when the customer touches your phone, it has to respond faster than your girlfriend. Yes. Simple.
Yeah, that says a lot.
That's it. And without Viagra.
Thanks, Arvind. Nicely put. So with the limited time we are left with, I'll throw it open for the questions. So anyone of you have questions, gentlemen over there? We can take 4 or 5 questions.
Hello, good evening, gentlemen. Thank you for a very nice interactive session. My question is actually to all the panelists, and it is based on the discussions that we've had since last couple of hours, which is on customer differentiation, customer services, and I'm sure that this is a lot to do with building loyalty. A large part of what we have been discussing is to do with customer loyalty. And this is my question that, and it's often spoken of, it's been a holy grail. I want to ask you, and I want to pick your brains, that is there indeed something called customer loyalty? Or if I was to say there's nothing called customer loyalty, would you tend to agree with me? If you just go back to the basics and say right product, right price, distributed at the right time, that's about it. That takes care of it. Sure. You spoke of the esoteric space also. So I want to ask you, and whosoever may want to answer this, that is there anything indeed called, because so much of amount and resources are spent on the subjects of customer loyalty, customer experience. I think we probably overdo it also. And then we said some time back that do we really understand this? So my question is that I am again repeating, is there anything called brand loyalty? Aren't we all intrinsically as human beings brand switchers and fickle rather than being brand fanatics? Thank you.
Arvind? Yeah, sure. Go ahead.
I think what you said is, I will take it a little differently. There's something known as consumer pride. You know, if the consumer is pride about what he's using, whether it's an Uber or an OLX or an Aircel or a Gionee, that's where the loyalty will come from. Actually, as marketeers, we want consumers to be loyal to us, but we don't create that pride. So if you create consumer pride and you take care of the dissonance, you have the greatest advocacy available.
Right.
I think customer loyalty, see, when you think about any product or any service, what is the first thing that comes into your mind is the loyalty. Like if you think about eating out or you want to eat a South Indian food, what is the first restaurant that you would think when you're thinking of that? Would be your loyalty to that, because that's something that you connect with. I think that is what is loyalty. It is not about buying loyalty, or it is not about creating loyalty from any other point. So it is about how do you, in the marketing jargon, it is about top of the mind recall. Thomas, they call it a whatever. I think that is what brands try and do, and that is what customer experience management is about. How does the customer experience the product or service in a manner that when he next wants to use the product or service, he thinks about you as the first. Yes. That is, in my view, what you're trying to do. So I think it's a misnomer that loyalty, otherwise, yeah, you're right, customers will switch if in case there's nothing different. You know, if in case you have to eat, say, a pav bhaji, and pav bhaji is same across all shops, you can go anywhere.
Yeah.
But if it is distinctive, people will go to a shop in Chandni Chowk and stand there in the roadside and eat a particular product. Why is that? It's because that is what is the loyalty to that particular product or that particular category.
Yeah. Next question.
Good evening all. This is Pushkar from Namara Uno. As the panelists consist of both the service industry and the traditional goods industry, it was rightly said that every customer experience has a cost implication to it. My question is that because of the service industry in the country, the customer experience bar has been raised up. The people today expect much out of the companies out there. Traditional companies still have not been able to fulfill those expectations. Do you think how exactly are we going to cope up the traditional companies, whether it's the product-oriented companies which are there or the traditional goods company? I would like to know your views on this, how exactly, because today in a service industry like Uber, they give the cashback of 300 rupees if the customer is not satisfied. If you are manufacturing a Gionee phone and a customer comes back after 30 days like this phone is not working, I think you have to have an insurance with you.
Yeah, about that. Gaurav, would you like to take it on? As a service company, what's your advice to the product companies? Are they lagging behind? First thing is, first question, he gave a good example that in terms of Uber giving 300 rupees away and Gionee may not be returning the phone even after 30 days. So that's one example, but my take is that product companies have come very, very far and they have been rising to the occasion. But what's your point on that?
So I'll talk brass tacks. What we like to do, there's a certain cost of acquisition for a new user on ORX. And we spend, say, X amount of rupees in getting that person in. Once that person goes out of the system, there's an X amount of money that's spent on reacquiring that consumer.
Right.
It's just like plain brass tacks over here. If I were to do a cohort analysis of these people, of people whom I lose and then I pay money again to reacquire,
Right.
then it's a very straight calculation for me. That this is the delta that I should give to my customer experience. Or, as I always said, I'm like, if a person is making sure that he's being heard through social media channels, through the interactions with us, can you actually devote that kind of money rather than reacquiring through paid media or elsewhere, and just acquiring that person in a much shorter time frame,
Right.
and maybe personalize his grievance redressal.
Yeah.
And that's how we do it. Because very frankly, it can be a little bit of a tiff or it can be a breakout, right? I would rather remain at a tiff and then sort
absolutely.
it out. And it's just like, it's brass tacks for us.
Exactly. No, I remember the college times. I think best the friends we made were the people with whom actually we had some bit of tiff to start with, right? If you all try to recall that, you'll find that best of the friends are the ones with whom we started with a tiff, and then we discovered that they were what kind of people they were and liked them because they were different, better, whatever. So I think that's a good point which he's making. Keep it simple. Just calculate the money wise. I think this part was very, very important to say that the money, it's actually at the end of it about the money. We are here to make money. You are going to spend much more. Why get into even that situation? Any more question here? So that's it. So I think. Sure, please.
You want to add to talked about the brand. Just to answer your question, most organizations in the mobile phone domain would refund your money if your phone goes bad in 7 days. And if you keep it intentionally bad for another 21 days, nobody's going to refund your money. So that's the general condition that happens in mobile phone business. And secondly, you talked about traditional versus new businesses. I can tell you this traditional versus new is the vehicles that you use. And the lines between traditional and new businesses are very clearly blurring, especially on the consumer support side. So in consumer support side, your business is largely online rather than offline. And in case of online guys, in terms of marketing, their business is largely offline than online. Right. So the lines are absolutely blurred. There's nothing like a traditional business because I start feeling old after that. And so just to leave you with this, online, offline lines are blurring. Customer is the king, will stay like that. Listen to him, he'll tell you how to set your standards.
Absolutely.
But build in your warranty cost and monitor it.
Just before I close with a story that talking about the phones and the traditional phones. So there was a friend of mine who lived in Charlotte near Atlanta, and he bought a telephone like the telephones used to be in the past 20 years ago from Walmart. And he took it home, and he had a nice estate where he lived in, and he had this country house and all that. So he was on the phone, and phone was left on the porch. Believe it or not, a lightning struck the phone, and it's destroyed. So he takes it back to the Walmart store to give it to them for exchange. And so this woman across the counter, she says, she takes it and she goes back and to find out whether they can replace it, and she comes back. If you want the white one, you have to come back a week later. Otherwise, I can give you a black one right now. Right? So I don't even know whether it was 7 days, 30 days, 3 years, or 5 years old. This is the level that the customer service is. And I think in India, we are very, very far from that because the standards which were set by offline, or I would say low technology, or the manufacturing companies, we are coming from there. Even today, when you go and look at the exchange policy of some of the retailers and some of the brands, and I think they are almost on the border of being illegal in some of the states in US. So, so that's where I close it, because long way to go on customer satisfaction as a differentiator. But I really appreciate for all of you guys sharing your thoughts and about your experiences, and specifically about the companies and things you are doing. And I'm thankful to all the audience for being so patient with us, and happy to be here. Thank you very much.